Today I'm going to do a wood emboss in Photoshop. Those of you who are my students know that when you name your file, you should always put your name into it. I'm doing a wood emboss, so I've named this wood emboss and I've put my name on it. So to get started, I've got my background layer, which I am just going to Command J to duplicate. I'm going to leave the pristine version of it here in the background. This is the layer that I'm going to work on. I'm actually not going to do anything at all to this layer. And I want to make it look convincingly like I have embossed my name into this lovely wood surface, which I believe I snapped somewhere on campus with my cell phone. So I'm going to choose a font. This tends to work better if you choose a font. I'm using my text tool, and I'm going to choose a font that has a heavier appearance once I get past Spinning Beach Ball of Death. I've got a lot of choices in here, ones that I've downloaded. You can download a font from the internet if you like. I'm going to use Cooper Black because I know that that's in there and it's a nice heavy font. Okay, so once I do that, I'm going to click and drag a text box about centered in my wood photo area. I can always center it later. I'm also going to choose a large font size. First, I'm going to type out my name. And as you can see, that's really kind of small. It doesn't matter what color it is to start. I'm going to use my text alignment tool up in the path bar to center the text, and yeah, you can see it's really teeny. Boo. Okay, so ways that I can enlarge the text. I can either choose a point size. I don't think 72 is going to be large enough. Nah. So while that is highlighted, if I use my up arrow on my keyboard, I can bump this up to a much larger size. I mean, you can see it's already up to 154 points. If that's not working out fast enough for me, I can always, I don't know, 300 point might be large enough? Maybe not. Let's bump it up to 700. Okay, 700, large enough. And what size you have to bump it up to will depend on the size of your original photo file. So like I said, this is not centered, not ideal, so I'm just going to move this using my move tool, which is up at the top of the toolbar. And I'm just going to drag this down. Okay, there's some things I have to do to this layer to get it to work. Kind of doesn't matter what color the text is. I can select it all. I don't know, mine came out white because that was the last thing I used. So if I want to make it black or darker color, I can. It really doesn't matter because I am going to leave the opacity of that layer the way it is, but I'm going to set the fill to 0. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait, now you can't see anything. Just wait. The way to get the emboss to work is to double click on the text layer that you just made. And when you do that, this little layer style panel is going to pop up. Bevel and emboss. You see, it came back up. Bevel and emboss is what you want. Because I want to make this look like it's embossed into the wood, I'm going to choose for direction. I'm going to leave inner bevel the way it is. Chisel hard would work for this. Chisel soft might also work. We'll leave it chisel hard. It also will depend on the surface that you've chosen and the font that you've chosen, what will be determined whether you choose. It's going to be inner bevel. Or emboss is good too. It's probably going to be chisel hard, maybe chisel soft. You can up the depth. And here's the important thing, direction. The default is up. I want this to look like it's embossed into the wood, not raised off the wood. So I'm going to choose down. So I could increase the depth some more. I could also increase the size. I don't want to soften it at all. For contour, I'm pretty much like everything else. I think I'm going to leave the way it is. I like the contour the way it is. Actually, size, I'm going to reduce that a little because that's ticking me off. Um, I'm going to leave the shadow mode set to dark, and I'm going to leave the highlight mode. Everything else, I'm not going to touch anything else in here. I could change the direction of the global light, depending on how I want. You know, there's a lot like shining a flashlight against something. And you'll notice that if you have something that's embossed into something else, depending on which way you shine the light, the highlight is going to be in different areas. So a lot of these that are in here I'm going to ignore for now, except inner shadow. Inner shadow is something I want to play with just because it's going to make this look a little bit more realistic. Right now it's really not there yet, so I'm going to bump up the distance for the inner shadow, which darkens things slightly. I'm also going to bump up the size. I'm going to leave the blend mode set to normal. I could always change the color if I wanted to, if I think black's kind of harsh, but this might work better, or perhaps something more brown. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. I could always bump up the opacity a little bit till it starts to look like, if you've ever played with a wood burning set or done stuff with branding or used stampers to stamp stuff into clay, this whole concept is going to seem really familiar to you. I could put a little inner glow in there. It's very subtle. The opacity is set to 100. I don't really want to bump up the size too much, so I'm going to leave it set at 9. Anything else in here I'm going to kind of ignore, but I think I'm going to go back to texture. The default texture that pops up in here is watercolor. I've got different choices in here and choices that I can add to. Noise, that just adds like a little bit of texture. So again, if I go back to inner shadow and I adjust the size of my inner shadow, that's going to determine whether or not this looks more realistic, more like it's branded in. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks for now. It looks like it's actually embossed into the wood. So I am going to call this done. And that is how you use the Layer Styles panel, the text tool, and fill to make something look like it's embossed into a surface.